Everyone. This is going to be my first attempt at a little preview commentary video. Just gonna talk about some of the cards that we got to see yesterday as of recording on Friday. We got to see all of the upcoming provisional promos, as well as a couple cards that will be in set 3. We can talk a little bit about. Yeah, just thought it'd be fun to add these to the mix, talk about the cards as they're shown off, give them little ratings, and yeah, because hot takes are fun. I'm not going to read all the cards aloud. I'm going to assume you have read the cards, or you can read the cards, or they'll be on the screen and you can read the cards there. I'll have some links to the previews in the description. And yeah, other than that, I'm just going to talk about them a little bit. Do like a little 5-point scale, I guess, just because. Nothing too precise, right? Just kind of encapsulating what I think about cards, and we'll fill it in the corner here. So yeah, let's just get underway. The first card here is Cheerleader. This looks like it's going to be Toru support, question mark, for maybe a new Toru of some kind. That Hagakure first form is very weird if there's not a different Hagakure to use it with. But absent that, you know, not even thinking about her, because we can't, that response is really good. Flashing an attack is a very strong defensive ability. The momentum cost is real. I think that's going to keep it from being a super staple. It's not going to show up literally everywhere. But you can imagine decks that get momentum pretty easily, decks like Arrow Chaco, decks like the good All Might Throw decks, stuff like that, would be very interested in this card. And I think when it does show up, it's going to be pretty good. Especially if the format continues to sort of slow down a bit and we see, you know, a lot of decks sort of trying to gear up for aggressive turn 3 kills at the earliest, or just kind of going into these grindy back and forth games, and you have more opportunities to pull this off. So yeah, not really like a 4x everywhere kind of thing, but I could see it showing up as a 2x in a bunch of decks, and or, you know, in some sideboards, depending on some situations. But yeah, certainly a strong card for sure. So I'm gonna go ahead and give this a 4. It's not like a hyper stable, but it's gonna be a pretty impactful card, I think. The next one we have is a little bit trickier to talk about. This one's Student of the Art. Once again, it would appear that there's going to be an Ojiro in the set of some kind, because this doesn't really work with the one that we have. And if you're not Ojiro, you're probably not playing this card. The only thing I've got in terms of playing this as not Ojiro is doing some really cheeky struggling with study stuff, where you put the attack in that you want to block with and then flip this to pick it up. That's a lot of work. But, you know, if you want to go really deep, you might 1x this or something. But realistically, as character support, we can't say a whole lot about this without seeing the Ojiro, so I'm just going to put 2 question marks. Next, we've got the provisional promo Recovery Girl. This has erupted a lot of controversy and talk on the Facebook and elsewhere. Characters like this are almost never good. Just, you know, historically. And I don't really see how she's going to break that mold. You have this fundamental problem where you don't get to do anything unless your opponent lets you, right? Your opponent has 100% control over whether or not you're going to have an opportunity to build things. And in her case, more so than even some other examples, if you're not taking damage, you are doing virtually nothing, except for you can blow up 2 to make them partial block your attacks, which is fine, but that's not exactly a killer offensive ability or anything. So yeah, the good players will, you know, not that they literally never lose a game to her or whatever, but they won't have too much trouble playing the game differently to deal with her, and she's just gonna, you know, sort of fizz out. For characters, I'll just give like a tier expectation. I think she's C tier. I would be fairly surprised to see her make a top cuts, but I would not expect her to get very far even if she does. So yeah, I mean, one way to think about this is that she needs to find enough stage pieces through her response to make her into a real character. And so even if you're looping You're So Obvious, if that's the only thing you're getting out of your response, that's still not a very good character. So, you know, before you start doing that, you have to have gotten, you know, some torches out or some card draw or something, so that you're more than just a 5-hander, and you have to have gotten some other relevant reusable pieces, and then you need to start looping the obvious, and by then you're at like 10. it just doesn't really add up in the real world against real opponents that know what they're doing. The other character we have is this All Might 5, who's very interesting. He cares a lot about smashes and cards with smash in their name, and we have a decent selection of those right now, but it's not great. So he's going to depend a lot on how many smashes we have in set 3 and what they do. So he's another one's a little hard to evaluate. I think with the card pool right now, you have to hurt your attack lineup a little too much to do what he's doing, and you don't have to be mono smashes. You can run probably one attack that's not a smash. You can squeeze in a hardened chop or maybe a late string move. But yeah, it is notable. You do get to draw cards both on offense and defense with this guy, so you can draw up to 4 cards a cycle. Pretty much anytime you attack or block with a smash, you get to draw a card. So that is a bunch of card draw, and the stats and the flexibility of it's not bad. And the deadlocks, it's there. It'll keep people from going to deadlocks sometimes. Sometimes it won't. It really, really depends on whether or not you can make a really solid sort of a good stuff style deck with an all or mostly smash lineup. I don't think you can quite do that right now, but it only takes 1 or 2 attacks, right? If there's like another smash that's as good as Texas Smash, then we're really in business, right? But I'm just gonna rate him for the card pool right now. Probably see it. You could play him. You'll win some games. You're probably just not gonna have quite enough juice to beat the better decks, I think. What's next here? Photogenic Hero. This is weird Mount Lady support. It lets her block and build with her character, which is fine. It helps her. It doesn't... That effect doesn't help anybody else. The destroy to stop speed bonuses for the rest of the enhanced step. There's not too many decks that can't play around this. You really want this to stop, what, like 3 or 4 speed or something before you feel good about destroying a foundation for it. And if you think about decks that, okay, well, they use their first enhance on their speed, whatever it is, their biggest speed bonus that they can get off. How many decks are going to have 3 or more speed after that? Probably not too many. It shares 2 with You're So Obvious, which you could already be playing. And we'll see if the set has more stuff to make maybe more Mount Ladies show up or something, but at the moment she's kind of just on the sidelines. I think this is going to be a pretty low impact card. I think there are some order decks, things like Order 4th Kind will sometimes do this, like speed boost, enhanced speed boost, enhanced speed boost spam. And it could be alright against those, maybe off the Void symbol, because Void doesn't really have any resets like that. So it could have a niche, depending on what the format looks like. But for now, I'd be kind of surprised to see it very much at all, so I'm going to give it a 2 out of 5. Living up to his example... This is another rough one. It feels cool to be able to play an EX or Powerful with, 1 card out of your hand kind of for a little bit free. But if you think about it, if this is first enhance, and let's say your 6 hand size of the example replaces itself. But this was an action card that said, discard a card, right? Give up a card from your hand for +3 damage because you activated Powerful 3. That's not that good of an action card, and if you're getting an EX2 for +2 speed, you could just be playing, there are action cards like Evil Gaze, there are cards like Go for the Win, and maybe your symbol doesn't have that or whatever, but I think you really need like an EX3 or a powerful 4 or 5 before you start thinking about this, and there aren't that many of those. And even then, you'd probably mainly be playing this for the low block. So I could see some decks that like both want low blocks, can afford to run an action card, and can maybe use the enhance. Could slot a copy or 2 of this in, but it's really going to be a filler, sort of cute role player card. Like I do think like we'll see this in a list somewhere that makes a top cut at some point, but it's not going to be a huge deal whenever it does show up. So I'm going to put that one down as a 2 as well. And then let's see, making sure I'm all lined up here. Yeah, so then we get into the attacks. Gigantic Explosion's an interesting one. So this combo enhance is very good if you're winning that turn, right? If your plan is to kill them this turn, taking out their 2 best foundations, you don't care what they take out of yours usually. That can be very, very potent and help you close out a game, right? I just got through playing Tokoyami a bunch using Hellflame Javelin to do exactly this, right? It's hard to think about what sort of deck it's going to show up in. Again, we'll see what any new characters do. I don't think it shows up in Bakugo himself too much, just because he's got a lot of 5 diffs he already wants to be running. He already wants to spend momentum on his powerfuls, that sort of thing. He's already flipping a bunch of stuff in their board. But you could see it in some other decks, some like Fury-themed decks that are looking for some, you know, more wall breaking, basically. The Earth on here is notable in that regard, I think. Because Earth has Apathetic, and that's kind of it. Death, you at least have, you know, what, Night Watch or something, but I could see this in like a Death Eraserhead. You know, sort of being a key piece of him closing out games, that between this card and Erase, you're just not going to have any relevant pieces in the board, and he's giving +2 speed on everything, and he's just going to play his hand against your hand, pretty much. I think that's a place we could see it. So it'll be something like that, where I don't think it's going to be all over the place, but I think there will be a couple decks here and there that are using this as their sort of long game, this is how I'm going to get up and over tool. I'm gonna give this a solid 3 out of 5. And we have Flamethrower. I like my snipes, so this card certainly interests me out of the gate. I think in sum total for the core, here's a 5 diff move that's going to hit a piece. If it lands, it's a worse Blue Flame Spiral, probably on average, and Blue Flame Spiral's not seeing a lot of play. It does have a different keyword. It has ranged, and it has order instead of chaos, so, you know, there's that. And you don't have to worry about, you know, what if they don't have 2 committed foundations or whatever. But I think the fact that it actually needs to deal 5 or more is a big drawback. They don't have to spend a mid block on it. They could partial block it, whereas the Spiral, they have to full block it with mid, so you could see Spiral in like a mid spam deck where you're trying to strip that out of their hand. But yeah, the one thing I will say for this card, it does have Powerful 3. So you can see a deck with Momentum Outlet. Obviously, if you have a deck that can manipulate the top of its deck, this gets more interesting. I don't know if there's a home for it in what we've seen now with the 2 sets, but, you know, I could imagine there being a deck that ends up running this card. I don't think it'll be the craziest be-all end-all card, even if it does, but I guess specifically if you're making momentum and you can stack the top of your deck to make this an 8-speed Powerful 3 move or something, you know, then maybe we're in business. But I think overall it's going to have a pretty low impact, so I'm going to give it a 2. And then Villainous Layway. This is the one that's probably the most likely to cause a bunch of stir. It is a 2-check, but this sort of hand knowledge, hand stripping on an attack that is otherwise reasonably statted can be very, very good. You know, some people have talked about using this in Sero. You know, again, there's not a whole lot of decks being run off these symbols right now, so there's not a lot that immediately jumps to mind of like, oh, this deck can run it. It does have that nice low block on it too. And, you know, if you're running the 2-check, if you're on Death or Evil, you might be wanting to run Excited for blood, and now you have to think about that and things like that, right? It's not, it doesn't just slam into every deck, but I think there are going to be more than just a couple decks that are using this to sort of crack the door open in a mid to late game situation. It's hard. It depends on the lineup, right? Do you do this with all mids and then you name mid, or do you name a different zone and this is your only mid attack or whatever? Very interesting, very thinky card. Yeah, I think we're certainly going to be seeing people trying to use this card a lot early on, and then how it actually shakes out, we'll have to see. But for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and give this a 4 out of 5. I think this card and out of the provisionals is probably going to have the biggest impact out of those promos, with, you know, a shout out to Gigantic Explosion. Yeah, so that'll wrap it up for this group of 9 cards. I figure I'll maybe do one of these like once a week or something like that, see if people like them. Some hot takes. Feel free to argue with me about cards in the comments. Feel free to make fun of my very imprecise scale, where I think Flamethrower is a better card than Living Up to Example, but I gave them both 2s. But that's fine. We're just kind of winging it here. Yeah, let me know what you thought. You know, let me know if you think I'm super wrong about any of these cards, or, you know, if maybe I pointed out something cool that you hadn't thought of or whatever. Really interesting seeing what the Ojiro does after, like, what is going on here with Student of the Art. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Take care.